I have this greedy aunt. She thought she could manipulate my grandmother to get me thrown onto the streets. But little does she know I have an ace up my sleeve, and I'm going to be the one to get her kicked to the curb. Here's how I'm going to do it.
I've never really watched soap operas, but I'm pretty sure they all take inspiration from my aunt, or I wonder if she binged on them a lot as a child and ended up being that way that she is because of it. Hey guys, I'm Leo, 19 and male. I've seen more drama in my life than I care to admit. Now, I'm not saying that I have it the worst, but honestly, it's not so easy to deal with living with my aunt. I live with my grandmother, my mother, her mom, Agatha, my aunt, my mother's younger sister, Edith, and her son, Lucas. My parents, they passed away when I was 8, and since then, my grandmother has been my guardian and my rock. Though she looks so tiny and harmless at 81, don't let her size fool you. She's got the strength of a lioness when it comes to protecting her family. Growing up, it was always clear that Grandma loved both Lucas and me a lot, but I could feel that she had a soft spot for me, maybe because I had lost my parents so young. If it weren't for Aunt Edith, Lucas and I might have been the best of friends. But Aunt Edith clearly had other plans. She always made it a point to differentiate between Lucas and me, ensuring that the competition was the only bond that we shared. Aunt Edith has been divorced for a very long time. I mean, as long as I really can remember. Her ex-husband left her when Lucas was just a baby, and since then she's been living with her mom. It wasn't easy growing up under the same roof as her. She had this knack for turning everything into a contest, pitting Lucas and me against each other in every way possible. In school, it was always about who got better grades, and at home it was about who got more time with Grandma, or who received the best gifts during the holidays. Even the number of friends that we had became a battleground. Edith would always make sure to highlight Lucas's achievements no matter how small. She would demean mine no matter how significant, and if Lucas got a B on a test and I got an A, she would go on and on about how hard Lucas had worked and how it was a miracle he got such a good grade. My A would barely even get a nod. It wasn't long before Lucas and I were constantly at odds. We couldn't see past the competition Aunt Edith had instilled in our minds for each other. So when I say I tried to stay close to Grandma, you really believe I clung to her like a monkey all throughout my childhood, as she was the only constant source of love and peace in life. As we grew older, the feeling of competition between us grew deep. I mean, how could it be now? My aunt left no chance to compare and compete with us in everything that we had and did. I remember on one Christmas when I was about, 13, the house was full of warm scents of pine and cinnamon. Grandma decorated the tree and we were all gathered around to open up some gifts. I got a beautiful set of paint and brushes from her, and I loved painting. Grandma always encouraged my creativity. Edith, on the other hand, would make these snide remarks about how Lucas had gotten a new video game, something he's been yearning for ages, implying that my gift was somewhat less. Lucas smirked and I felt a pang of hurt. She could even make me feel bad about something I love. Talk about taking the sparkle away from everything good. In high school, it was about who had better extracurricular activities. I was on the basketball team and Lucas was in the debate club. Edith attended every one of Lucas's debates, cheering loudly, but she barely showed any interest in my games. Even if she did attend, it was more to point out my mistakes than to come support me. Despite everything, I tried to rise above my petty competition. I focused on my studies, sports, and painting, and Grandma continued to be my biggest supporter out there, always encouraging me to follow my passions and not let Edith's behavior get to me. It wasn't even like Lucas was a bad guy or disliked me much. Sometimes I could see that he did not enjoy the constant rivalry any more than I did, but Edith had always had a way of manipulating situations, making him believe that competing with me was the only way to win her and her grandmother's approval. It created a rift between us that seemed impossible to bridge. Sometimes I feel like this was all much harder on him than on me. I mean, sure, I spent most of my childhood getting compared to and demeaned as a child, but he had this constant pressure on him to not just compete with me, but be better at everything. And guys, I just remember this one time. During a school science fair, I had spent weeks building a working model of a solar-powered car. It wasn't perfect by any means, but I was proud of it. Lucas had chosen to present a detailed project on the solar system, complete with a 3D model of every planet. When the judges came around, Aunt Edith was there, hovering over Lucas like a proud hawk. She made sure everyone knew every little detail of his project, praising his creativity and knowledge. When they got to mine, oh boy, it was so much of a different story. She barely acknowledged my project at all, and when she did, it was with a half-hearted compliment that felt more like an afterthought. Afterwards, Lucas came up to me looking guilty, and he said it quietly. "I'm sorry, Leo. Mom just gets so competitive." Another time, during a family barbecue, we had a friendly basketball game in the backyard. I'm pretty good at basketball, I'll say, and Lucas knows it. But instead of enjoying the game, Aunt Edith kept shouting at Lucas to show me how it's done, and something about not letting me win so easy. It took the fun out of it for both of us, and there were other instances too, like when we both applied for the same summer job at the local bookstore. Aunt Edith kept reminding Lucas about how important it was to work hard and beat the competition. It created this tension between us that made everything awkward. Despite it all, I knew Lucas was a good guy deep down. He didn't ask for this constant rivalry and more than I did, and Aunt Edith's need to always one-up me overshadowed any chance that we had at being close. It was like she could not see how damaging her behavior was to the both of us. I wish I knew why she was like this or what I did. I never did this to make her hate me so much. Once I turned 18, my lovely aunt started something new altogether. She got into a new habit of getting fake worried about my future and seemed bent on getting me out of Grandma's house. It started subtly enough. She would drop hints during family dinners about how important it was for young adults to spread their wings and experience independence, hinting at how I should consider moving out. There were little comments here and there about how I should start thinking about my future and living independently. She would mention how important it was to be self-sufficient and how living with Grandma was holding me back. I remember how shortly after my 18th birthday, she brought up college applications and living arrangements while Grandma was in earshot. She would talk about the benefits of living independently, as if trying to plant the idea in Grandma's mind that I should move out soon. It felt like she was nudging Grandma into agreeing with her. Then there were the not-so-subtle moves. She would leave the apartment listings on the kitchen counter or talk loudly on the phone about how great it would be for me to have my own space. It was like she was trying to make me feel like I was overstaying my welcome. And one day, when Grandma was out visiting a friend, Aunt Edith sat me down for a little heart-to-heart. She starts off with how living independently builds character and how it's important for me to start thinking about my future. She made it sound like Grandma had been talking about me moving out, even though I knew Grandma enjoyed having me around. Another time, we had a disagreement about something so trivial, and instead of just letting it go, she turned it into a lecture about responsibility and how I needed to start taking charge of my life. It felt like she was trying to create conflict just to justify her argument that I should move out. It wasn't just words either. Aunt Edith would bring up stories about other kids my age who were living independently and doing well. She'd praise their achievements and independence, subtly making me feel inadequate for still living at home. Well, it's been over a year since she's been trying to get me out of the house. Of course, none of her tricks have worked, seeing as I'm still living happily with my grandmother. However, things are not so peaceful anymore. My aunt turned more chaotic. It was somehow possible, still, and more evil version of herself. I wish I just knew why it was so important for my aunt for me to move out, because since none of her tactics to make me move out had worked, she had set out whole new goals and parts to get me kicked out. Yes, as if pushing me to move out wasn't enough, my aunt took her actions to a whole nother level by trying to frame me for things I never even dreamt of doing. It started with subtle accusations, hints dropped here and there about how she's been hanging out, she saw me, with the wrong people, and I smell like smoke. Grandma would look concerned, but she always gave me the benefit of the doubt, trusting in the bond we shared. But Aunt Edith was not satisfied with this, so she starts planting evidence. One day, she conveniently discovered a pack of cigarettes hidden in my room and made a huge scene about it in front of Grams. I tried to explain that those aren't mine. I don't smoke cigarettes. But Aunt Edith had already poisoned Grandma's mind with doubts, and now there were accusations of stealing? Aunt Edith claimed that she found money missing from her purse and suggested Grandma check my room. Of course, nothing was found because I hadn't taken a dime, but the doubt had already crept in, eroding Grandma's trust in me bit by bit. The worst part was, yesterday, Aunt Edith planted a baggie of white powder in my dresser drawer, claiming it was drugs. Well, when Grandma found it, I was devastated. I pleaded with tears in my eyes, trying to prove my innocence, but Grandma looked torn, wanting to believe me, and Aunt Edith's lie had taken their toll. My grandmother has not said anything to me yet, but she hasn't talked to me at all. I can't bear to see the disappointment in her eyes. I was fine, just taking in my aunt's snide and mean comments, and her making me compete with Lucas and everything, but I cannot take her ruining my relationship with Grandma like this. She's truly my only family member. I can't bear to lose her. Guys, what should I do? Is there even anything that I can do? What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you guys are enjoying today's story. Let me know in the comments section what the heck you would do if your aunt was acting like this. So, we do have 3 updates to check out, and things are about to get crazy between Grandma and Aunt Edith. Here we go, guys. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Update number 1 is here. If anybody thought things were bad until now, wait till you guys hear about what my aunt did next. It's funny how my life went from somewhat troublesome to complete chaos within 7 days. So, you guys remember my post, I'm the person who, how scheming and malicious my aunt became in her attempt to get me kicked out of my house. Well, 2 days before yesterday, she crossed all her limits. She framed me for something I could not have thought of doing in a million years. The worst of my dreams. Remember how it all started with the little things, casual comments about how money seemed to go missing more than often, and how some of Grandma's valuables weren't where they were supposed to be? Well, guess who Aunt Edith is blaming it all on? You guys guessed it right if you said me. At first it was just indirect hints, but soon enough, Edith's accusations became more direct, and all of them were aimed at me. She would often make offhanded remarks at dinner about how kids these days cannot be trusted, or how she just hoped nothing precious would disappear from the house. Grandma would give her a look, sometimes puzzled, sometimes concerned, and Edith was planting seeds of doubt in Grandma's mind, and it was starting to work. Well, then 2 days before yesterday, she planted some of the, quote, stolen items in my room to make her story believable. Had it just been some expensive items or something else, I still would have been able to handle things just a little. However, among these items was Grandma's most prized possession, an old family heirloom, an antique locker that had been passed down through generations. It held immense sentimental value for Grandma and was a symbol of our family's history. The disappearance of the locket was a big deal. I clearly remember coming home from school that day, exhausted from basketball practice, and finding my room turned upside down. Grandma was standing in the doorway, tears in her eyes, holding the heirloom locket and with her wrinkled hands. It didn't take me long to understand what was going on, and saying I was stunned would be an understatement. How did it get there? Who could have done this? My mind was racing with questions, but deep down I knew the answer. Aunt Edith. Grandma asked me if I had taken the locket, and her voice was full of hurt and confusion, and it broke my heart to see her like that. I told her I didn't take it. I would never do something like that, but the evidence was glaring right there in my face, staring at both of us, and Grandma looked torn, caught between her love for me and the damage of the proof that Aunt Edith had manufactured. Well, to no one's surprise, Aunt Edith continued filling Grandma's ears with more lies for the rest of the day. She painted me as a deceitful, ungrateful grandson who had been stealing from the family for who knows how long. She said I was a bad influence and that I was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and that's only a matter of time before I get into serious trouble and be sent to jail. She suggested that Grandma should kick me out, saying that it's the only way to protect the family and its legacy. It's been 2 days since the incident, and Grandmother has not talked to me at all. Her silence on my aunt's suggestion, wow. I don't know, of letting me move out, it's growing and it's starting to scare me. I think just it might happen. I don't know. I guess I'll probably update from the street soon. Wish me luck, guys, because I need it. Update number 2. Hey, I know it's only been 3 days since I last updated, but I've come to tell you guys what I've gotten my hands upon. I'm too excited, so if my words run astray, please bear with me. After the incident, oh, by the way, new readers refer to my previous updates, the silent treatment from my grandmother grew, and so did my anxiety. As time went on, the tension in the house became unbearable. Aunt Edith, her lies, had created a rift between Grandma and me. Despite my efforts to prove my innocence, I could see the doubt growing in her eyes. I'm not sure if I can even call them efforts. They were feeble attempts in my end, but they were nothing more than pleading with Grandmother to believe me that I would never do something to hurt her. What else could I do since I had no solid evidence? Exactly. Well, this hit me too. That's all the trouble that I'm going through can be solved easily just by having solid evidence of my innocence right there in my hand. The question was, how do I find it? I was desperate, and when no brilliant idea came to my mind after waiting as patiently as possible, for, a whole day? I decided to go back by the book. The old classic confession secret recording. Now, I knew getting a confession out of Aunt Edith was not something that I could easily achieve. However, I guess I could hope that if I confronted her alone and stood my ground, she was bound to slip up. The little slip-up was all I needed. So, with determination and after tons of praying to the Lord, I decided to confront Aunt Edith. Edith was right there in the living room, sipping her tea with an air of satisfaction. I took a deep breath and approached her. I told her that I knew that she was behind all the accusations, and that she had planted the stolen items in my room and spread lies about me to Grandma. To my utter surprise, instead of denying it, Edith looked at me with a twisted grin. She confessed to everything with a victorious satisfaction that made my blood run cold. Well, at this point, she even admitted to framing me for stealing money and valuables, including Grandma's precious heirloom. She revealed in her success, gloating about how easily Grandma had believed her lies. Edith's goal was simple, to manipulate Grandma into throwing me out so Lucas would be the sole inheritor of her wealth. But that was not the worst part. As she continued, her tone grew even more venomous. She revealed how much she hated me for stealing the affection of her mom, which should have been her son, and how she wished that I died with my parents too. Hearing those words felt like a punch to the gut. I knew Edith was the word hate incarnated as human, but still I never knew that she would have this hatefulness and vindictiveness in her heart. Anyways, as you all know, unbeknownst to Edith, I had my phone in my pocket recording everything. I started recording the moment I confronted her, hoping to capture any slip-up. Now I have a full confession. Every malicious word and every hateful wish. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I know that this recording could be my ticket to proving my innocence and redeeming myself in front of Grandma. I was too excited to go to Grandma directly, so I'm cooling myself off a bit. Soon I'll go and tell her the whole truth about her daughter. I'm just sad that she'll have to go through another heartbreak in such a short time. But I guess it can't be helped. Anyways, I'll update you guys on how it goes. Until then, so long and goodbye. Update number 3. Even if the almighty God himself had warned me about a huge upcoming twist, I would not have guessed it to be so huge. Aunt Edith is out of the house. Now, you guys must be like, well, Leo, you already have evidence against her. We see no twist in her being kicked out of the curb. Yeah, that's true. But what if I told you I never needed the evidence in the first place, guys? Yeah, I know. Let's start from the beginning. So, the next day after I posted the last update, which was about 4 days ago, I gathered courage to confront Grandma about Edith's lies. Edith was out, and I found Grandma in the garden tending to her flowers. She seemed upset, but listened as I spilled everything, how Edith had framed me with false accusation. When I played the recording of Edith's confession, I expected Grandma to react, but she remained expressionless. Don't get me wrong, I knew that this could have been a huge shock for Grandmother, yet I expected her to react in some sort of way. Shock, anger, sympathy towards me, you name it, but there was nothing on her face. Just a plain stone-blank look that she got. Well, and she got up and asked me to go back to my room and leave her alone. I kid you not, I was losing my pancake-flipping mind right there. I asked whether she believed me now or if she still thought that I stole her heirloom, but she said nothing and repeated herself, requesting that I leave her alone. I had absolutely no choice but to comply. Well, disappointed, yes, disappointed indeed. I left with a million questions inside of my mind. Did my grandmother really not believe me, or did she trust her daughter way too much? Does she think that I created a fake recording to frame her, and if she did, what would happen to me? I just went to my room, shut my door, and slept, leaving everything to fate. However, that evening, Edith returned from a party to find her bags packed and thrown out at the house. She was shocked and furious, and she stormed into the living room, demanding to know what is going on. I was actually awoken by her loud noise, and I hurried downstairs to see Grandma, Edith, and Lucas already there. Grandma, calm but determined, asked me to play the recording again. As Edith listened, her expression shifted from a shock to anger and back to normal. She suddenly laughed manically and asked her mother if she actually believed it was her in the recording, and started going on and on about how I was a lying idiot who went as far as to create an AI fake recording to save his neck. Grandma interrupted her and revealed that she had installed a secret camera in the vault, where the heirloom was kept, and Lucas played the footage from the camera on Grandma's phone, showing Edith stealing the family heirloom. Well, Edith, she turned pale with fear as she realized the gig is up. She knew that she lost. Enraged and humiliated, she lunged at me, but Grandma stood between us as a protective armor. "You've done enough damage, Edith. I've tolerated your behavior for far too long. It's time for you to leave." Edith, her face turned red with anger, and she tried to argue with Grandma. But before she could, Grandma warned her that if she now or ever created trouble for her or me, she would call the police and hand her over for theft. That was enough to shut Aunt Edith up. She was thrown out of the house with no money, no place to go, and no one to rely on. Lucas was given a choice. He could leave with his mom, or he could stay with Grandma, promising to take care of him financially until he was of age, regardless of his choice.